The 2016 Contemporary Issues Forum is addressing the topic of spirituality and its influence in the role of politics, elections, voting, and the lives of the candidates and presidents. The forum's featured speaker is prize-winning historian, acclaimed author, Emmy Award nominee, and Dartmouth professor, Dr. Randall Balmer. How are you, Dr. Balmer?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
You know, you're an expert on a topic that's kind of affecting all of us right now in this election year. Tell me, how does a gentleman grow up to become an author on spiritual, moral things and how it pertains to politics?
Well, my background is probably not all that different from yours.
Okay.
I grew up in an evangelical household. My father was a minister for 40 years in the Evangelical Free Church. And I grew up interested in the faith and grounded in the faith, but I came, by the time I went to graduate school, to be interested in American religion more generally, particularly American religious history. So I studied actually colonial history, religious history in the colonies in graduate school, and then I moved gradually into more contemporary issues.
And you've written a couple of books, one particularly about President Jimmy Carter and his spirituality. So tell me, how did that come to be?
I'd been interested in Jimmy Carter for a long time. Jimmy Carter entered the national stage when I was in college, and because I was used to the language he was talking about, being a born-again Christian, talking about his faith in an unashamed way, that caught my attention. And so I began thinking even back then about the possibility of writing a book about Jimmy Carter at some point. A book that took his faith seriously because he takes it seriously. I think he's a remarkable man in many ways. I wouldn't argue that he was a great president, and I think even he would not say that he was a great president. But he's a remarkable man because of his faith, and because his faith informs his entire life, and particularly his post-presidency. I think you really begin to see that.
And you've come to town for a couple of lecture series. Let's talk about those two.
Yes, the first lecture on Monday night is going to be on the religious or spiritual values in the 2016 election.
Or lack thereof.
Or you could argue we're still trying to find some,
Right.
but nevertheless. And the second lecture on Tuesday night will be more specifically about Jimmy Carter. But particularly in the first lecture, what I want to emphasize is that it's been a long historical journey to get where we are today. So you have, for example, leaders of the religious right who are endorsing, and these leaders of the religious right have been talking about family values and moral foundations for 40 years at least. And you find now that they're endorsing a candidate who, at least at first blush, doesn't look like a perfect example of those values.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that journey and where it kind of started, and what are some of the things that have happened to lead us to the question mark that we have right now.
Well, I don't have time to get into all of it, obviously.
The shortened version,
the
the
short
Coles
version
notes.
is that evangelicals were very interested and active in social reform in the 19th century, particularly before the Civil War. And they were aligned on issues that would be considered on the left of the political spectrum today. For example, they wanted to enact prison reform. They were interested in various peace initiatives. They advocated for full and equal rights for women, including voting rights, which in the 19th century was a radical idea. And what happened is, again, it's a longer story than I can tell right now. What happened is that by the, say, 1970s, evangelicals had really fallen away from that and fallen away from their own birthright as agents of social change on behalf of those on the margins of society. And the reason they became involved politically in the late 1970s had nothing to do with those issues, had nothing to do with abortion, by the way. This is what I call the abortion myth, and I will talk about that. Nothing whatsoever to do with abortion. It was, in fact, organizing to defend racial segregation in segregation academies and places like Bob Jones University.
Interesting. We have to take a break. Hold that thought, and when we come back, let's dive a little deeper into that and learn some more. All right? Stay with us at STL Live. We'll have more with Dr. Randall Balmer after this break.